At the time of the events of this video, Julia Cecchettin was just 22 years old in November 2023. A biomedical engineering student at the University of Padua, she was only days away from graduating and beginning the next chapter of her life. Friends and family described her as intelligent, hard-working, and deeply loved by those around her. What should have been one of the most exciting periods of her life instead became the center of one of the most widely discussed criminal cases in modern Italian history. Julia had previously been in a relationship with fellow student Filippo Turetta. The relationship ended in August 2023, but the two remained in contact. According to Julia's sister Elena, the breakup was difficult for Turetta to accept. Family members later described a pattern of possessive behavior and emotional pressure that had become increasingly concerning in the months following the separation. Julia reportedly felt responsible for managing his emotions and worried about how he would react to the end of the relationship. Although they were no longer together, she continued to communicate with him and occasionally met him in person. On the 11th of November 2023, the pair arranged to spend time together. Julia left home at around 6 p.m. and traveled with Turetta to a shopping center in Marghera near Venice. She was preparing for graduation and wanted to buy items she needed for the occasion. During the evening, they ate together at a McDonald's restaurant inside the shopping center before leaving later that night. At 10:43 p.m., Julia sent a WhatsApp message to her sister, Elena. It would be the last known message she ever sent. The following day, concern quickly turned into alarm. Julia had not returned home, and her father, Gino, reported her missing. As friends and relatives began sharing appeals online, investigators started piecing together her final known movements. Witnesses soon provided information that would prove significant. One man reported hearing a young woman shouting for help during an argument in a car park near Julia's home in Viganovo. He called emergency services, but no unit was immediately available to respond. Investigators later obtained security footage from a nearby industrial area that showed a violent confrontation between Julia and Turetta. The footage became a crucial piece of evidence in understanding what had happened during the final hours before her disappearance. As the search intensified, the case rapidly became national news. Italian media covered developments around the clock, and public interest grew with each passing day. Authorities discovered that Turetta had left Italy, triggering an international search effort. A European arrest warrant was issued, while Julia's family made increasingly urgent appeals for information. Her father even recorded messages in multiple languages, hoping someone somewhere might provide a lead that would help locate his daughter. For nearly a week, millions of people across Italy followed the story. Every update was closely watched. Many still hoped that Julia would be found alive. Those hopes ended on the 18th of November 2023. Search teams discovered Julia's body near Lake Barsis in northern Italy. She was located in a remote wooded area that was difficult to access. The discovery brought an end to the search, but marked the beginning of a new phase of the investigation. An autopsy later documented numerous injuries and evidence that she had attempted to defend herself during the attack. The findings shocked the country and intensified public reaction to the case. Just one day later, Turetta was arrested in Germany after his vehicle came to a stop on a motorway. He was taken into custody and later extradited back to Italy. During the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings, he admitted responsibility for Julia's death. What followed was unlike the aftermath of many other criminal cases. While the investigation continued, public discussion increasingly focused on broader issues surrounding controlling relationships, emotional manipulation, and violence against women. Many people pointed to Julia's experiences in the months before her death as an example of warning signs that can sometimes be overlooked. Her family became central voices in those conversations. Particularly influential were the public statements made by Julia's sister Elena. She argued that people should pay closer attention to controlling and possessive behavior long before situations escalate into tragedy. Her comments resonated with many Italians, especially younger generations, and helped transform the case from a criminal investigation into a wider national discussion. The scale of public reaction was extraordinary. Demonstrations, vigils, and marches took place throughout Italy. Thousands gathered to honor Giulia's memory. Her funeral in Padua was attended by approximately 8,000 people and broadcast nationally. Many who had never met her felt connected to the story because they saw elements of experiences they recognized in their own lives or among people they knew. At the funeral, Giulia's father delivered a message that drew widespread attention. Rather than focusing on anger or revenge, he spoke about the need for cultural change and greater awareness. In the months that followed, he dedicated much of his time to educational initiatives, speaking with students and encouraging conversations about relationships, respect, and personal responsibility. The legal process continued throughout 2024. Prosecutors argued that the crime had been planned in advance and sought the most severe punishment available under Italian law. The trial attracted enormous media attention and became one of the country's most closely followed court proceedings. In December 2024, Filippo Turetta was sentenced to life imprisonment. The court recognized aggravating factors including premeditation, kidnapping, and concealment of the body. Today, Julia Cecchettin's name remains widely known across Italy. Her family established initiatives in her memory, and discussions sparked by her case continue in schools, universities, and public institutions. The tragedy became a catalyst for conversations about relationships, warning signs, accountability, and prevention. For many Italians, Giulia's story is remembered not only because of what happened in November 2023, but because of what followed. Her death prompted difficult national conversations that continue to this day, ensuring that the young woman who was preparing for graduation became a symbol of a much larger discussion about how similar tragedies might one day be prevented. For more than 3 decades, one of France's most notorious unidentified offenders was known only by a nickname, Le Grêlé, meaning the pockmarked man. Witnesses had described a confident stranger with distinctive acne scars, but despite years of investigations, sketches, forensic testing, and public appeals, nobody could put a name to the face. The mystery would remain unsolved for 35 years. The case began in Paris in 1986. An 11-year-old schoolgirl named Cécile Bloch disappeared while on her way to school. Witnesses later recalled seeing an unfamiliar man inside her apartment building. One of those witnesses was Cécile's own half-brother, who shared an elevator ride with the stranger shortly before the girl vanished. He later remembered the man as being unusually polite and remarkably self-assured. Those details would stay with investigators for decades. Following Cécile's case, additional attacks occurred across the Paris region. Investigators gradually realized that several crimes appeared to be connected. The same unknown offender was eventually linked through forensic evidence to multiple murders and assaults committed between the mid-1980s and the mid-1990s. Yet, despite the growing body of evidence, the identity of the offender remained hidden. One of the most disturbing aspects of the investigation was the possibility that the offender possessed professional knowledge of police procedures. Surviving victims reported that he sometimes identified himself as a police officer. In some incidents, he allegedly displayed official-looking identification, used handcuffs, and demonstrated restraint techniques associated with law enforcement training. Investigators began to suspect that the man they were hunting might not simply be pretending to be a police officer, and he might actually, genuinely, be a police officer. That theory gained strength as the years passed. Detectives noticed recurring patterns. The offender appeared comfortable navigating investigations and seemed capable of avoiding detection in ways that suggested inside knowledge. Evidence also pointed toward connections with locations and procedures familiar to members of the French security services. Even so, proving that suspicion was another matter entirely. Thousands of potential individuals could fit such a profile. The breakthrough finally arrived decades later. In 2021, an investigating magistrate overseeing the cold case ordered an ambitious review. Around 750 current and former police officers who had been active in the Paris region during the relevant period were identified and asked to provide DNA samples. It was a massive undertaking, but investigators believed modern forensic science could finally succeed where previous efforts had failed. One of the men contacted was François Verove, a retired police officer and former member of the French gendarmerie. Verove had spent years working within French law enforcement. He had served in the Republican Guard before later becoming a police officer in the Paris region. By the time investigators contacted him, he was retired and living quietly in southern France. To neighbors and acquaintances, he appeared to be an ordinary family man who had successfully built a respectable life after leaving public service. On September 24, 2021, Verove received a summons requesting that he provide a DNA sample. Days later, he disappeared. His wife reported him missing and concern began to grow. Then on September 29th, authorities discovered him unresponsive inside a rented apartment in the coastal town of Le Gros-du-Roi. Alongside his body was a handwritten note. According to investigators, the note contained admissions that he had committed serious crimes during the 1980s and 1990s. However, the letter did not provide a complete account of every offense or victim. The real confirmation came from science. DNA recovered after his death was compared with forensic evidence collected from multiple crime scenes. The results were conclusive. The genetic profile matched evidence preserved from several of the attacks that had haunted investigators for decades. The mystery of Le Grêlé had finally been solved. Yet, even with the identification of François Verove, many questions remain unanswered. Investigators believe his known crimes may represent only part of the story. Over the years, additional unsolved cases have been examined for possible links. Some experts have suggested that the true number of victims could be significantly higher than the cases formally attributed to him, because Verove died before a full interrogation could take place. Many of those questions may never receive definitive answers. For the families affected by the case, the identification of Le Grêlé brought a form of resolution but not complete closure. After more than 3 decades, they finally learned the identity of the man investigators had pursued for so long. What they never received was a full explanation. The person behind one of France's longest-running criminal mysteries was eventually found, but many of the secrets he carried disappeared with him. On the morning of July 25, 2019, Alexandra Măceșanu found herself in a situation that most people would struggle to imagine surviving. The previous day, she had been traveling near the Romanian town of Caracal when she accepted a lift from a stranger. Rather than being taken to her destination, she was instead taken against her will and held inside a property she did not recognize. She had no idea exactly where she was, no way to contact her family, and no obvious way to escape. Then she found a phone. At 11:05 a.m., she dialed Romania's emergency number. When the operator answered and asked what the emergency was, Alexandra did not hesitate. "My name is Alexandra Măceșanu. I was kidnapped by a man yesterday." There was no confusion about what she was reporting. Alexandra immediately identified herself and explained that she had been abducted. She then begged for help. She said, "Please come quickly. I don't know where I am." The operator began asking questions about her location. Alexandra explained that she believed she was somewhere in Caracal, but she could not identify the exact address. She had been brought there by force and had no idea where she was being held. As the conversation continued, the operator asked a question that instantly raised the seriousness of the situation even further. Had the man harmed her physically? Alexandra's answer came back through tears. She said that she had been violated. At that point, emergency services knew they were speaking to somebody who was reporting an active abduction and a serious assault. Alexandra remained calm enough to answer questions, but it was obvious that she was terrified. Then, without warning, panic entered her voice. For a brief moment, she sounded as though she had seen something horrifying. Then she screamed, "Come quickly, please." The call disconnected. Nobody listening knew exactly what had happened. Had the man returned? Had Alexandra been discovered using the phone? Had she dropped it while trying to hide? Whatever had happened, the line was suddenly dead. Fortunately, she managed to call back. The second call began just over a minute later, and Alexandra immediately started trying to provide every detail she could remember. She explained that she had been blindfolded after being taken. She remembered seeing a dam during the journey. She remembered traveling in a grey car. She remembered being locked inside a room. Most importantly, she explained that she was not calling from her own phone. She said, "It's his phone, I found it here." That detail transformed the situation completely. Alexandra was risking everything simply by making the call. If the owner of the phone returned and discovered what she was doing, there was no way to know what might happen next. As operators continued questioning her, Alexandra desperately searched for anything around her that might reveal her location. She looked through the room, examined objects nearby, and searched for names, addresses, or anything else that might help rescuers find her. At one point, she found a business card. The name printed on it was Lucian Popescu. Whether the card belonged to the man holding her or someone else entirely, Alexandra had no way of knowing. She simply read every piece of information she could find, in the hope that it would help investigators locate her. Throughout the call, she repeatedly returned to the same plea. "Please send someone, I'm scared." The fear in her voice was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. As police officers joined the call, Alexandra continued providing information. She told them she believed she might be near an area called Bold. She explained again that she had passed a dam. She described the car. She explained that she was alone. Then she discovered something else, an address. Reading from the business card, she said, 9 Antonius Caracalla Boulevard. The information immediately triggered questions among the operators. Some records suggested the address belonged to an apartment building. Alexandra corrected them straight away. "It is not a block. It is a house." Then she returned to what mattered most. "Come quickly. I am scared. Please." The pattern repeated throughout the conversation. Police asked questions. Alexandra answered them as best she could. Then she begged for help, again and again and again. She explained that she had been beaten. She explained that she was frightened. She explained that she could not leave. Eventually, officers instructed her to stay where she was. Her response was devastating. "I'm staying here because I cannot get out." She was not choosing to remain there. She was reminding them that she was trapped. As the call continued, Alexandra suddenly noticed something outside, a big car. Nobody knew exactly what that meant in the situation. Perhaps it was unrelated, but to her it seemed very serious. Whatever the case, the anxiety in her voice immediately increased. The call eventually ended. Just a few minutes later, Alexandra called emergency services for a third and final time. By now, her voice sounded noticeably more desperate. The very first thing she asked was whether anybody had actually been sent to help her. She said, "Did you send anyone? I think he is coming back and I am scared." For Alexandra, time was clearly running out. She was no longer focused on identifying landmarks or remembering details from the journey. She was now begging for help, begging for someone to save her life. The officer assured her that police had been dispatched. The officer told her that police could not simply arrive instantly. Alexandra continued crying before tragically asking, "Please stay on the phone with me, I'm scared." It was not a complicated request. She wanted somebody to remain with her. She wanted somebody to talk to. She wanted somebody to know that she was still there. The request was denied. The officer explained that there were other calls to deal with and instructed her to clear the line. Alexandra continued crying quietly. The officer again told her that police were coming. Finally, she agreed to end the call. She begged once again, "Please." Those were the final known words Alexandra Măceșanu spoke to emergency services. Finally, by the early hours of July 26th, investigators believed they had identified the property connected to the calls. Even then, entry was delayed while officials sought a search warrant, despite later criticism that one may not have been required. By the time police finally entered the house, Alexandra was gone. They were far too late. The property belonged to 65-year-old mechanic George Dinker. He was arrested and taken into custody as investigators searched the house and surrounding grounds. During questioning, Dinker eventually confessed to ending Alexandra's time on this earth. He also confessed to the killing of another woman, 18-year-old Luisa Malencu, who had disappeared months earlier. Human remains and personal belongings connected to the investigation were recovered from the property, although aspects of the forensic evidence would later become the subject of controversy and debate. Some members of Alexandra's family continued to question parts of the official account and believed important questions remained unanswered. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Thousands of people took to the streets in protest, accusing authorities of failing Alexandra after she had repeatedly told them exactly what was happening. Senior officials were dismissed, including Romania's national police chief and other local officials involved in the response. Even Romania's interim prosecutor later stated that the reasons for the delay needed to be fully explained, adding that a person who, by all indications, could have been saved, had lost their life. Alexandra didn't vanish without a trace. She was not unable to ask for help. She reached emergency services 3 separate times, explained that she had been abducted, provided every clue she could find, and repeatedly begged for assistance. The tragedy here is that her calls were answered, but still nobody saved her. Thank you so much for watching. I'm uploading daily true crime and dark content here on this channel, so make sure that you're subscribed, hit like on the video, and also drop a comment so you get shown more of my stuff. Please do be careful out there, and I'll see you tomorrow.